is? What are the most common behaviors that you see within the classrooms?
First behavior, which we normally see, is physical, which would ultimately lead to somebody getting hurt in the bargain. Second is disruptive. Disruptive behavior, when that happens in children, it leads to disrupting the normal routine of the classroom. Then there's destructive behavior, which leads to some kind of destruction, which could be within the classroom environment. It could also mean destructing other children's work, other children's toys. And the fourth behavior is withdrawn behavior. And that is when a child shows signs of being shy, introverted, doesn't want to join in any kind of group settings. So I think that the fourth behavior, the one where the child is introverted and shy, may not impact the classroom functioning as such, but it is a behavior which, as a homeroom teacher, you would be concerned about.
And what is the structure of the classroom? Do you have any like quiet corners or areas where you can actually take kids and take them aside to regulate them? Do you have such?
So basically, I don't think we have a corner like that. I think it's something for the teachers to create. Typically, in my class, we can go up to a maximum of 15 kids. I have 2 teaching assistants working with me. And what I find is that it's important that surely you keep, kind of put a mark on a behavior you've seen, but observe it over a period of time. Write down important notes about the time of the behavior, the triggers of the behavior, what actually happened, what did you do, stuff like that. Because when you look back at that information, it can give you an idea of strategies you can use, and also just clarify things which are hard for you to do at that point of time.
Mm-hmm. You see, my take on this is that all behaviors have underlying reasons. Naturally, a child is not going to act out necessarily just to to upset the teacher or to create some kind of a disturbance within the classroom. There's always something underlying, whether it's to seek that negative attention or whether it's something else that is going on. Now, a lot of the kids that I'm sure you work with and all have, sensory regulation issues, for instance.
Right.
I'm not sure if everyone is aware of sensory dysfunction, but kids, especially on the spectrum, or even the ones with ADD, ADHD, and all, can be sensitive to input from the environment, which causes them a discomfort. And this discomfort can raise levels of anxiety. And then, of course, to allay that anxiety, there are certain behaviors that you may see, which could be, like you mentioned, it could be physical, like self-stimulatory behaviors, where the child acts out, where the child is seeking movement, or the child is perhaps appears to be aggressive. Also, the withdrawn behavior that you're talking about, for instance, it could also be the result of being hypersensitive to some kind of stimuli. So what the child is doing is essentially to protect themselves from that particular stimulus or that anxiety-provoking input. They will shut themselves down to the extent you might find that they're sleeping in the classroom very often. And I totally agree with you that to watch over a period of 2-3 weeks and to see especially what are the trigger points.
So I think since you're talking about sensory regulation, I think I could just bring in an example I just currently was working with. And, this little boy started off with me. And because of the sensory issue, what I was finding was that, he would run around the classroom, just knock things over, things from the table. There would be chairs going down all the time. And so, of course, it was also a safety issue for him and for the other kids as well. So after making that observation for a couple of weeks, I kind of realized that this is more about a sensory issue. He needs that time to kind of calm down, because what I was finding was there was something in the environment which was triggering his anxiety. And because he was not doing this in the beginning of, when he first came into the classroom, it happened just within an hour he started like that. So what you mentioned, the quiet corner. So because I observed him over a period of time, I had seen through my notes that he had this thing about dipping his hands into paint and just kind of just making these hand prints all the time. So I kind of, and this is an easy strategy for me to use. So what I did was every morning I used to set out a little bit of paint and a paper on the table. And whenever I felt he was he was excited and he was just exhibiting this kind of behavior, which was disruptive to an extent, I kind of just took him by the hand and took him to that corner, and he sat down, and I just let him make as many hand prints as he could. So that kind of helped him regulate. It would take about 5-7 minutes. But what I want to really mention here, Huma, is that I think as educators, we do forget that, remember, when there is one particular child in the class exhibiting this behavior, all the other children are watching as well. So we don't want this to come out as a negative reinforcement. So personally, I don't in my classroom like to call it, I know some teachers like to call it a timeout corner. And to me, that is a big no-no, because I think for children, they need to understand that that's a corner. I'm specially taking you there. I've set it up so that when you go there, it is going to help to regulate you. Now, for this particular kid, when you're walking to this child, especially, what I find also is that we forget as adults, it's very intimidating for a child when a teacher or when a grown adult is talking to them. So it's really important that you sit down at their level and very calmly, in a very calm and gentle tone, you just say to them that I think you need a little bit of, cooling out time or chilling out. So let's go do something, and just walk them over to that corner.
Going back to now the art materials, you're talking about the child wanting to dip their hands in the paint. So I'm going to bring my art therapist bit in here now. So all art materials have inherent capacities to evoke certain emotions and sensory responses. So as you said, paint. Now, paint is a material which usually taps into deep emotional content. Not only that, it tends to create high arousal in a child. On the other hand, let's look at the basic art materials. So we have pencil. A pencil is more rigid. A pencil actually helps control anxiety because it lends itself to control as well. And of course, you can apply a certain amount of pressure using pencil. Then you have clay or Play-Doh, which is a very grounding kind of material, though it can be regressive as well at times. So if, let's say, in my art therapy session, if I were to work with children to regulate their, let's say, sensory responses or even their anxiety, or bring down, some kind of a behavior which may be disruptive or unwanted, what I do is I use these sensory qualities of the art materials and alternate between them to manage the levels of arousal. So let's say if a child, for instance, is not at all motivated to do something, I will usually go for something like paint, because paint is also excitable because it's fluid, it's harder to control, and it creates this excitability. On the other hand, if a child who's already very, let's say, perhaps very energetic, and I would not give them paint. I would give them pencil, I would give them crayon, I would give them pastel, or I would give them a cutting pasting activity, because that is something that will bring down. Yeah. So I think every classroom should have an art corner where you can just take the child away and very discreetly and have them engage in, let's say, play with Play-Doh, pound it, knead it, mold it, coil it, or whatever, and that will immediately bring down that level of anxiety in the child. And then you take them back to attend to the lesson or whatever. So what I have found is that if children are highly anxious, they are not actually open to learning. And of course, then the behaviors, the behaviors just come. So I'm wondering if this is something which can be done within the classroom, because these are very basic art materials that I'm talking about.
It is. As much as it sounds very easy to say, it's sometimes harder for, so the strategies have to be really, really simple. So another thing which really, really worked for my younger ones, I found was stickers. And I should buy boxes of stickers and just leave it there and give them a blank piece of paper and let them peel off those stickers and just keep peeling it off. It is a simple movement, and honestly, it just kind of brought the levels down completely. And they were ready. They regulated themselves enough to go back And so I do want to mention here, though, that it is also really important when you see these behaviors in the classroom, whether it's physical or disruptive. At that point in time, when the behavior occurs, the idea is to move the child away from that spot, because really at that point, keeping them there and trying to talk to them at that point, they're not listening to you.
I totally agree with you.
But it's also really important. Which requires consistency, maybe a little bit of time, is to revisit again wherever we left out at. So let's say in an instance, if this child has knocked over something, at that point of time, I'm not going to tell him that, it's important you clean up at this point. So take him out, regulate him, but he needs to go back and put it away again. And that's where I think as teachers, I've found that it is really, really, really important to loop in the parents with this, because what we use in the classrooms are strategies, but it is important to find out if something similar like this is happening at home as well.
Yes.
What are the parents doing with it? How are they handling it? Because if it is a completely different strategy, or they're just really letting the kid do what he or she wants, truly you helping here in the classroom doesn't kind of really completely, it defeats the purpose to me. So for this particular child who I'm talking, and I keep bringing his example back because he kind of fits the profile into everything what you're saying. And one of the things I did try with him, and which may be a little bit not within the art therapy thing, is that he needed movement breaks because the amount of energy in this child was up to here, right? So what I used to do with him was, and for younger kids, you can make it a fun activity. I used to say to him, we're going out for an animal walk, and I would just walk around outside the classroom, a 2-minute walk maybe, right? And I would say to him that when we walk, we're going to walk like maybe a lion, and then I would jump with him. So by the time you're done with that, you can see that the energy has been released and the child is ready to come back into your classroom.
No, so you're talking about movement, and I think most classrooms will have some kind of space where you could actually paste perhaps large pieces of paper, and you give two crayons in both hands, and you let the child make huge circles on the paper using the entire body. Sometimes I would, tell them to jump up and down and, touch maybe a certain point on the paper, so that the whole body was involved in that activity. And this would often, the children who were seeking more of the movement, it would really help them calm down before engaging in some kind of learning, or in some other, maybe the desktop activity for that instance. So yes, movement can be very important, but it can be incorporated. You could even have do the same on the floor, for instance.
I think as a teacher, Huma, we have the strategies, but sometimes not all strategies work in your class. So you have to kind of water it down to make it purposeful in your class. But these are simple things which I think which are so easily doable. And I think, it's important that we try them first. And of course, if nothing is working, space it out, give yourself some time. If you're not seeing any results, of course, the next step would be intervention of some sort. If your school has that, then, you can kind of contact them. And if not, you can talk to the parents about taking them outside. But in my opinion, I think these behaviors, some of them at least, can be kind of managed within the classroom itself by very simple strategies we can incorporate into the regular routines, and it works really well.
Okay, all right.